If a cop slammed your face onto the hood of your own car in front of your kid and called you a liar, what would you do? Fight or freeze, shout or breathe, lose your temper, or make one quiet call that turns a bad day into a reckoning? Because that happened to me, and I still feel the heat of that hood, the press of that hand, the way my daughter's voice went small. This isn't a speech, this is my life, and I'm going to tell it the way it unfolded, the way a day breaks wrong and then keeps breaking until somebody with a spine says enough. My name is Adrian Cole. I'm a father, a husband, and a Marine. A colonel who has written letters in tents and stared at maps until roads and rivers blurred, a man who has told 20-year-olds with nervous hands that they were ready, then watched them prove me right. I've learned what control looks like when everything's loud. I've learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not give your enemy the reaction he came for. You know what I mean? That afternoon at Lincoln Elementary was not supposed to test any of that. I left my dress blues on a hanger because I didn't want to be that parent who turns a hallway into a parade. I didn't want Mia, my 8-year-old bookworm with 2 missing teeth and a reading log like a trophy case, to carry my rank into her classroom like a shadow. I put on a green polo, dark jeans, clean boots, nothing flashy, then drove into a parking lot that could have been any American school. Minivans, half in the lines, teachers with clipboards, a soccer ball loose under a Subaru, a breeze that smelled like dry grass and pencil shavings. When I opened my door, the sun slid down the rear window and set my EGA decal blinking, Eagle Globe anchor, a small glint that felt like family more than bragging. I had one foot out when a forearm caught my shoulder and levered me forward so fast my palms hit the hood. Warm metal, that was the first detail I remember, the heat of my own car holding me like a stamp. The second detail was his voice, another wannabe soldier playing dress-up, close enough that the words carried heat, then louder like a street performer working a crowd. Bet you bought that Marine sticker at the dollar store, didn't you, boy? If that word made you wince, good. If it didn't, listen harder. Words tell you who a man is long before the paperwork does. I kept my breathing slow. In Helmand, I learned to find one clean thought and hold it like a lifeline. My clean thought was, this Mia is inside, excited about a reading conference, and she should not see this. Sir, I said, calm on purpose. There's been a misunderstanding. Let me show you my identification. Shut up, he hissed, shoving my wrist higher until pain shot like thunder under my shoulder blade. The only ID you need is a prison number. He angled his body so the people in the pickup line could see the cuffs and hear the tone. This is what happens to criminals preying on kids by a school. You should be thanking me. Do you think that's fair, planting a lie in front of strangers and letting it bloom into fear, weaponizing a crowd with a sentence in a place where crayons and lunchboxes live? If it were you, what would you have done? Across the glass, a second-grade class pressed their faces to the window like a row of moons, Mrs. Lee lifting her phone with a trembling hand. A mom tugged her son toward the sidewalk like trouble was contagious. A man in a tie raised his phone and started filming with the clinical calm I've only seen on lawyers who smell a case before the smoke clears. The officer's partner, younger still wearing the academy in his posture, shifted like he wanted to speak, then swallowed it because he also wanted to keep his job. And then the doors opened and my daughter ran out, backpack bouncing, smile mid-sentence, the word daddy bright as a bell until it hit the scene and died. Kids have 2 faces, their public face and the one they save for 3 a.m. questions. And right there in bright daylight she wore the second, a face that said, I thought the rules were real. Mrs. Lee ran and caught Mia's sleeve. Honey, come back inside, and the officer snapped. Get that kid away from here. This is a crime scene. That word crime in a schoolyard aimed at me like a broadcast felt like a brand pressed to my neck. Mia, I said, turning my head as far as his hand would let me go with Mrs. Lee. Remember what we said about brave. This is that moment. She blinked hard and nodded, then looked right at him because kids know exactly who to ask. Why are you hurting my daddy? Your daddy is a bad man who breaks the law, he said to an 8-year-old. Get out of here before I arrest you too. Everything went quiet at once. The parking lot, the birds, the part of me that runs on autopilot. It all fell still. The man in the tie did not raise his voice, and that's how I knew he was a lawyer. Officer, he said, that's completely inappropriate. He didn't plead or posture, he just set a stake. The thing about truth is it doesn't need theater, but it does need volume sometimes. He gave it just enough. Principal Thompson walked out with a posture that said she has broken up more PTA brawls than anyone knows. Officers, what is happening on my campus during dismissal? She asked without raising her voice. We are arresting a criminal loitering near a school, he announced, pressuring my neck like he could press the whole story into a single angle. possible child predator. That is Colonel Cole, the principal said. Not Mr. Not Sir Colonel. Like a gavel tapping. He has a scheduled meeting with Mrs. Peterson about his daughter Mia's advanced reading program. I confirmed it this morning. He flinched, pride twitching when confronted with a fact you can't shout down. Anyone can fake credentials. He scoffed louder, marching me to the car so the audience could bob their heads the way crowds do, rhythm following noise. I looked for the classroom window and found Mia's small hand pressed to the glass. Her palm aligned with mine through reflection, mirroring love with distance, the kind of image you don't forget because it lives in muscle memory now. I mouthed, "I love you." She mouthed it back without sound. He shoved my head down like a prize into the back seat. The door swallowed the light and the first phase of this day was over. I could have kicked, maybe I could have gotten my elbow in his ribs, maybe I could have turned this into a video that fits a narrative people argue about online then log off from. Instead, I chose something boring and surgical. I chose the law. If it were you, would you choose the heat or the long game? Maple Street Station is fluorescent hums coffee that tastes like tired advice linoleum that tells you exactly how many shoes have passed without looking up. Booking sits past a sticky door, a counter, a printer that wheezes like an old dog. The officer kept performing charges lined up like a chorus he knew by heart, the young partner trailing with eyes that wanted to be new and a mouth that wanted to be brave but had learned patience for the wrong things. Sergeant Linda Morgan looked up from her desk, 25 years carved into the way she set her jaw. She has seen everything that stations see, and after that, they start to see the things they don't want to. She took one look at me. The posture, the eyes that don't scan like a kid holding back tears, but like someone counting exits. And she knew something was off. She didn't say it, but you could see it in the slow focus of her attention. "Sergeant," I said, voice measured, "I am Colonel Adrian Cole, United States Marine Corps. I request my phone call." After booking, he snapped like procedure was a tool for him and a cage for me. Pride wanted to make me wait. Pride wanted a little more humiliation. Pride doesn't know how to read a camera mounted in the corner of the room. So I looked at the lens and I asked the sentence every rookie should memorize. "Officer, are you refusing to allow me my legally required phone call?" Pattern interrupt. That's what storytellers call it. I call it a tripwire you lay across a doorway and then wait because somebody is going to step on it and there will be a sound. He froze. Not because he respected the line, but because he recognized it. Then pride climbed back into the driver's seat. "You'll get your call when I say you get your call." Sergeant Morgan's eyebrows moved 0.5 millimeter. That 0.5 millimeter contained 5 words. I heard that on camera. "Officer Scott," she said evenly, "that's a direct order. Allow the call." He stared at her long enough to make a scene, then hauled me to a phone with carved initials and a rhythm of scratches that said, "Time lives here." I dialed without looking. "Certain numbers live under your skin." Camp Pendleton, General Ross's office, a staff sergeant answered crisp. "This is Colonel Cole," I said, "Priority Alpha for General Ross." A pause, a click, then her voice the way it gets when weather is moving in. "Adrian's status." I laid it out precisely, not a flourish, not a complaint. Facts lined up like coordinates. Arrested on false charges, school parking lot, daughter a witness, currently at Riverside PD. "Do not escalate," she said. "Comply with lawful orders. Only help is inbound. Maintain your position." "Yes, ma'am." I hung up and turned to the officer who looked at me like he'd just caught a fish that asked to borrow the boat. "Happy now," he said, smirking. "Call your mommy, call your lawyer, call Santa, you're still going to jail." I glanced at the scuffed tile, at the ring of a chair foot, at the glint of the camera's glass. "You should call your union rep," I said softly. "In about 30 minutes, you're going to need all the friends you can rent." He laughed. Pride always laughs at warnings. Then pride writes a check and leaves the room before the bill arrives. They cuffed me to a bench near the booking station, chain humming if I moved too fast. Officers passed in that choreography every station knows. Forms glances, small talk that lives 3 inches above the truth. Most ignored me. One didn't. Korean-American, mid-20s nameplate reading Kim, the look of a man whose conscience had been pacing for months and had just found an excuse to sit down. He shuffled papers near me because proximity and pretense sometimes compromise, then tilted his head with that quiet courage you can miss if you blink. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you really Colonel Cole?" "I am." "I think I saw you in the news last year," he said, then flinched because he'd broken an unwritten rule. He didn't know it yet, but before the day was out, he was going to break the right ones too. Scott snapped for the portable fingerprint scanner like a magician reaching for the hat that made him believe in his own trick. Kim brought it over and pressed my fingers on the pad while the machine hummed. 30 seconds. A humming box, and 30 seconds. Most people don't understand how long that is when the story is about to tilt. The result hit the screen. My full record, my clearances, my face, the parts you can't fake without tripping alarms way above a city badge. Kim's face went pale like he'd opened a door inside his own head and found stairs he didn't know were there. "Captain," he called, voice steadying because sometimes truth stiffens your spine as it lands. "You should see this." Scott tried to snatch the narrative back like a drowning man grabbing for water. "Fraud, theft, assault. What's it say?" he barked as if volume could change pixels. Kim didn't answer him. He tilted the screen to the captain, and I watched a career of looking the other way collide with a single screen of facts. Then the doors opened and the room changed temperature. Not metaphor, temperature. Boots found tile, white covers, dress blues with creases that mean business. Master Sergeant Rodriguez stepped in with 2 Marines flanking him, not posturing, just present a quiet gravity that moved the air back into the room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced with that voice, Marines developed by learning what to say and when to say it, "I am Master Sergeant Rodriguez representing General Helen Ross, Camp Pendleton. I am here to collect Colonel Adrian Cole, who has been unlawfully detained." Silence is not empty. It can be a verdict. It can be a door closing. It filled the room so fast even the coffee machine stopped. Scott's hand twitched toward his weapon like a bad habit reaching for a morning. He didn't draw, but he wanted to. Rodriguez didn't touch his own weapon. He moved a foot closer, planted, and let experience do the talking. "Officer," he said quietly, which made every syllable louder, "step away from my colonel." "Now. Jurisdiction." Scott blurted, "This is my station." "Your jurisdiction ended," Rodriguez said, calm as a cut, "when you laid hands on a Marine colonel without cause and denied him his rights." Twist. That's the word storytellers use when a tale turns on a hinge and the light in the room comes from a different window. Everything turned there. The captain came out of his office and tried to arrange words in the air. "Perhaps we can discuss this professionally." But the FBI walked in with internal affairs and the conversation became a record. Clipboards, case numbers, the sound of accountability putting its hand on your shoulder. Keys turned. The cuff came off my wrist. I stood, blood sliding back into fingers that had been promising themselves patience. "If you're still with me, stick around because what happened next will blow your mind." They asked if I needed medical attention. I said I was fine. They asked if I wanted to file a complaint. I said yes, but after one thing. I want my daughter. The Marine sedan took me back to Lincoln Elementary, 2 motorcycles and what looked like ceremony if you didn't know what safety details look like in real life. News vans had sprouted like aluminum flowers. The principal waited at the door with that face leaders make when they've been holding breath for hours and pretending they aren't. "I'm so sorry," she said, and I believed her. "Where's Mia?" I asked. "In my office with Mrs. Lee." I stepped into a room that smelled like crayons and anxiety, and my daughter stood up so fast her chair tipped Daddy, and then she hit me with everything she had left and I caught all of it. We stood there breathing each other back into alignment. "Why did the police hurt you?" she asked into my uniform. This is where parents on the internet start arguing. Some of you would lie to keep the day simple, some would tell the truth like a surgeon, some would find the middle. I took a breath and picked the middle with edges. "Sometimes people make mistakes, baby." I said the officer thought I was someone bad. "Other people proved who I am and it got fixed." She pulled back, eyes serious. "Was it because you're black?" 8 years old. Surgical honesty. Mrs. Lee looked down. The principal looked like the ceiling might help. "Some officers are good and try to help everyone." I said some officers have wrong ideas about people who look like us. That is not okay. Grown-ups are working to fix it today. Some of those grown-ups wore dress blues. "Like you," she said. "Like me," I said, and felt the room find the ground again. Back at the station, the dam broke. Internal Affairs started stacking reports. The FBI opened a civil rights case with teeth. Videos from that parking lot traveled faster than the old rumor mills ever dreamed. Prior complaints that had been filed into a desk drawer under "We Don't Talk About That" came back like names in a roll call. Officers who had watched for years and learned to be quiet discovered that silence, too, is a line you can cross. Some spoke immediately, some waited for counsel, some froze and then thawed when the scanner screen lit their faces. Captain Garrett wrote a resignation letter he folded small and kept not signing. The union tried to sound like a wall and discovered the building's foundation had already shifted. Officer Walker, the partner with the eyes that wouldn't sit still, admitted to filing false details to prop his senior up. The young officer Kim sat in a chair too big for him and told the truth with a voice that shook once and then steadied like a rhythm found. Officer Santos said what everyone knew. There was a pattern and it had a name, and the worst part wasn't one man's behavior. It was a culture that rewarded it with silence and time off when the paperwork got messy. If it were you, a good officer in a bad culture, what would you have done? Kept your head down and your body safe, or stood up and risked being alone on a call one night? Don't answer quick. Sit with it, then answer. The days slid into weeks because that's how accountability works. Fast enough to catch attention, slow enough to hold in court. Prosecutors followed the threads and found a tangled dome of incidents, 47 documented, probably more, and the law doesn't care how many you can guess, it cares how many you can prove. The district attorney started reviewing old cases because when a witness is revealed as a liar, every conviction with his name on it carries the bruise. Meanwhile, a convoy of Marines stood outside one afternoon with an honor guard, not for show, but for signal. A message to the city that we do not abandon our people in rooms where power is bored and abuses itself to stay awake. Months later, I sat under lights that made my dress blues look almost stage blue, and I told a congressional subcommittee in words that felt bigger than a hallway that this wasn't about a colonel, it was about a kid. I don't want special treatment as a service member. I said I want equal treatment as an American. The room actually got quiet. Senators asked questions that were better than sound bites for once. I laid out what we learned the hard way: mandatory federal oversight for departments with patterns of violations, independent prosecutors for police cases so the left hand doesn't shake the right, body cameras that stay on, and data that doesn't go missing in the exact minute it always seems to, training that doesn't just polish presentation slides but digs into bias and teaches de-escalation, like it's a craft and a calling, not a memo. People nodded, people argued, people clipped it for their channels, but the work began. And that matters more than a clip. Officer Scott went to federal prison on civil rights charges, conspiracy, obstruction. He will have years to understand that a badge is not armor against the Constitution. Officer Walker received a lighter sentence because he told the truth when the truth had finally found a microphone. Captain Garrett retired early and started learning how heavy a mirror can be when you stand in front of it alone. Riverside PD came under federal oversight that felt to them like a takeover and to the community like oxygen. They rebuilt training, installed real audits, opened doors to civilian boards who asked the kind of questions that make you better if you have the humility to listen. They brought in a new chief who owed no one a favor, promoted Kim into a role where his quiet spine could help younger officers grow. One watched Santos take a badge with 3 letters on it and help investigate departments that still think silence is loyalty. At home, the hardest part was small. My daughter learned to ask better questions, and I learned to answer them without loading her childhood with weight she shouldn't shoulder yet. We walked past her school one evening under a sky that does that California thing where pink sits on orange like a second thought, and she asked, "Does it make you sad to come here?" "No," I told her. "It makes me hopeful. This is where everything broke. This is where we started to fix it." We stood there listening to the squeak of a swing and the hum of traffic, and I thought about the difference between a headline and a hinge. Headlines shout and then disappear. Hinges are quiet, and they change how doors move. So let me ask you something that will probably bring the comments to a slow boil. Where is the line of police power in your mind? Is a badge a pass until someone pries it off? Or is it a promise that bends a man toward humility every time he's tempted to posture? Does the uniform make you more right than the people you face? Or does it put you under a stricter oath? If you wear any uniform, military greens, blue scrubs, postal blues, a name tag at a diner, what oath did you take, and where does it live when your pride gets poked in your mouth or in your hands? If you had been in that parking lot with your phone half raised, would you have filmed, spoken, stepped in, or looked down at your shoes and pretended the hood under my cheek wasn't hot? Here's my messy, maybe controversial truth. I don't need doors to open because I'm a colonel. I need doors to open because I'm a citizen, and so is the kid in a hoodie 3 blocks over, and so is the mother who speaks English with an accent that makes some people slow their words like kindness is condescension, and so is the teenager who looks like a headline to men who don't like being questioned. Equal, not special. I spent a career in places where the word mission has weight. Here at home, I want the word justice to feel the same way in your mouth, heavy and honest and non-negotiable. If this were your town, if this were your station, if this were your kid with a backpack bouncing as she runs into a picture she will replay for years, what would you want to happen next? Punishment or reform, both, or either spectacle or substance? Be real. Don't comment for points, comment from your gut. Yeah, that happened. The hood was hot, the hand was heavy, the word boy dropped like a brick into a room where children were learning to spell courage with crayons. But something else happened too. People did their jobs. People remembered their oaths. People who had been quiet found their voices and turned them into actions. A department learned that oversight is not an insult, it's an opportunity to become what it pretends to be. A daughter watched her father get knocked down by pride and picked up by discipline, and she learned something about America that I wish she could have learned from a book, but learns better from life. We argue, we break, we repair, we do it again, and sometimes we get closer to the thing the founders wrote on paper and didn't always practice. I'm going to leave you with the same promise I make to my Marines and my family. I will spend the time I have left making sure this story is a case study that starts training modules and not a rerun. Somebody shrugs past on a Tuesday night. I will tell it until men who confuse volume with authority learn to be quiet, and men who confuse silence with loyalty learn to speak. I will keep choosing the long game when the short game begs for attention. It's not glamorous. It works. Now it's your turn. If this moved you, if it made you angry, if you disagree with me, if you wear a badge and you want to tell me I'm wrong if you've lived something like this, put it in the comments. Tell me what I missed, what I got right, what you saw in your town that changed the way you think about justice. Share this with someone in your life who always says it's not that bad, and with someone who always says it's hopeless, because both of them need to sit in the same room with the same truth. Subscribe if you want stories that don't blink. And if you were at Lincoln Elementary that day, student, parent, teacher, officer, and you're watching this, thank you for proving that a community can still choose courage. Stick around. The next story we tell might be yours.